front?
Sure. To the table. I think it is.
Go ahead,
we have
Charlie.
Eric Lane and Tim Gould.
We're gonna mix it up a little bit.
I talked to Andy yesterday and he said he had a PowerPoint, so.
We'll start with that.
You want to share?
Dude. Grab this one.
Andy, you can run it from the little thing there too. Yeah.
Great.
Sit up with your chair.
Fresh from the Greater Dispatch.
Now we can start the meeting. We're ready to-
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I just want to give you an update on where we are. Obviously, you know about the Cass County contract ending at the end of this month, and we've been working for the last 6 months in regards to trying to come up with a revenue that would replace what we lost with the Cass County contract. During this last 6 months, we put together a committee of members from the county in regards to trying to come up with ideas to earn some revenue back that we had lost. But first, I want to start out with where we're at currently in regards to jail revenue. As you can see on the screen, Stearns County is currently at $211,000 we've earned from Stearns County for their inmates. We had Stearns County come into Crow Wing County last year. They approached us about boarding some of their inmates because of staffing issues they're having down in Stearns County. So we accepted that. They came in and they've been working with us great the last almost year now since they came into the jail. Since January 1, we've made that $211,000 in revenue from them. I had a conversation with Stearns earlier in the year and worked a deal to get them to bring an average of 30 inmates into Crow Wing County for us. They've been averaging about 25, 30. I think I talked to Amy Netland and she said we were at 27 currently, so that's been really good. Numbers we weren't planning on having. Cass County, obviously, our contract, we're at $331,000 with them, which that's as of May 1st, which will be obviously the end of this contract here, June 1st. And then, of course, we have our other counties that we have approached to try to bring in some extra revenue with Beltrami, Coochin County, and the DOC at $78,000. And Beltrami's numbers are in the single digits. It's nothing significant in regards to any kind of revenue.
Andy,
Yes.
Stearns County is gonna be building a jail. Do you know when they're gonna start construction?
They're in the preliminary stages right now in regards to, they have a design. From what I understand, they're looking at building a new sheriff's office, jail, judicial center. It's $335 million project. They actually are bringing it to the public for a vote to add some tax increment financing to try to pay for it that way. I don't know where that's going to go, and I don't know when that is going to go out for a vote, if it's this fall or whatever. But even if that was the case, I would predict it's going to be at least 2 years before we see any
Okay.
change in regards to them bringing inmates anywhere else right now. So,
Very good, thanks.
and their issues are staffing, and their jail is a 150-bed unit, so they have some issues with space, but also with staffing in their facility.
There's also not consensus on the Board of Commissioners either on doing this, so.
I can't imagine that.
Yeah. So that's still up in the air if that's actually going to happen. If everything worked out great for them and everything got approved, I would predict it's going to be a minimum of 2 years before they see anything for taking anyone out of our jail. So we've had a great relationship with them. Troy's been working with them. We've really done our due diligence trying to actually build those relationships with Stearns County to keep them here, and I'm hoping that maybe we can see more of their inmates in the near future. So.
Good, thanks.
Projected revenue for 2024 was $1.9 million. As you can see, that's what we expected to make, but that was before we knew that Cass County was leaving us. Year to date, currently from January 1 to May 1st is $620,000 what we've currently made from our revenue stream. So the committee sat down as a group and we discussed what the revenue opportunities would be or what ideas we had. We came up with several because of course Cass County was ending June 1st and we had 40 boarders at $9.98 thousand. So the revenue opportunities that we discussed was, number one was Impact Program, which you've heard about recently in the paper. It's been a great program for us. The transports, we talked about, can we make money off providing transports for other counties to and from our facility to try to bring more inmates in? Bulk discounts, see if we can get counties to bring in large numbers of inmates to our facility for purposes of revenue. Stearns County is the only one that reached out to us and been able to fill that request. Mille Lacs County, adult juvenile. So this idea was that we would do a swap with Mille Lacs County where they would actually bring us their adult inmates and they would open a juvenile facility in their jail. The sheriff and I went down and had a meeting with the sheriff and the chief deputy about this idea. Problem with Mille Lacs County right now, they are currently out of compliance with the DOC, and they cannot bring in any juveniles with their facility. Matter of fact, they can't even take in any boarders. They currently have their own only, and they have 20 to 30 inmates in their facility currently right now. They actually have to board outside some of their inmates that they currently have. Of course, then we also talked about the DOC U.S. Marshals. We are currently working on that. Then we talked about maybe opening up a mental health unit in our facility, and we talked about a juvenile detention center in our facility, bringing in special populations such as females, and then release planning program that we could do in the jail that might bring in some revenue. So where are we at with those opportunities? The impact program started on the 29th of January. We're averaging about 9 inmates in there. You got to remember the program is week to week, so anyone can join any given week, and so it fluctuates based upon release in and out. We have lots of people that actually apply to be part of this. I'm not sure where we're at right now, Troy.
We have 38 total for the year, and I think we just have 4 or 5. We had to put a little pause on it due to the anti-ligature project. So we had to shut down one of the housing units and relocate. So we were unable to run it at its full capacity.
Yeah, so we had 38 inmates go through the program so far. Currently, I believe it's around the average of 9. It is in disarray right now because we're doing the work in the jail. We had to move them around and we had to combine them with other pods so we could open a pod up. So we're working through that. But we did have one DOC boarder that was ordered to the impact program, which was kind of on the road. What we were thinking is that we'd get other jurisdictions, other probationary groups to bring people in that actually would send them to Crow Wing to be part of this impact program. And we did have one, but we're still in the infancy. We're right at the beginning of this. We're still trying to build a name for ourselves. You know, as the paper, you know, put the article in there, that information got out. There's been a lot of good, you know, commentary in regards to that. So we're hoping that we can get the word out, we get it out through probation, and we can start bringing in some additional revenue. But right now, it's just an unknown. Then we talked about the transports. Where are we at with transports? The only thing that we found that would bring in any kind of revenue is help supporting with the federal inmate contract that we were talking about. There really wasn't much revenue to be found in regards to using us as a transport to bring in other boarders back and forth. Most counties will have court and so forth on a regular basis, and it just didn't work out well for us to try to provide services for agencies like Beltrami County when they only have 1 or 2 inmates here. It was not cost effective. Then we started working with the bulk discounts like I talked about with Stearns County. We did make an agreement with Stearns County that I want them to maintain that 20 to 30. They've been averaging 27 inmates in our jail, up to, I believe we're up to 35 at some point in time, so that's been a good deal for us. They haven't wavered with that, and they have not given us any indication that they're going to lower that number. And from talking to the chief deputy, it sounds like it's going to be consistently that way for quite some time, given the circumstances in Stearns County. As of today, we've made $211,000 from the Stearns County agreement, and we are estimating the total agreement with them to, at the end of the year, to $674,000. Where are we at with Mille Lacs County? Like I talked to you before, the adult juvenile swap is just not going to work out because they're non-compliant with DOC currently. They are sending their adult females currently to Aiken County because of some of those concerns that DOC has, and they do not currently board inmates, so there is no revenue opportunity right now with that idea. There we go. Oops. U.S. Marshals. We are currently working with a contract with the U.S. Marshal's Office. I believe this could be a significant income stream for revenue for us, but the paperwork, the contract stuff has been quite intensive. We didn't realize how deep they would go. They are asking for information in regards to our benefit package, what it costs us to keep the lights on, what our power bills are, what our heating bills are. They want to know everything so that we can be accurate when we're talking about what they're going to agree to pay us for revenue. From what I'm hoping, based upon 10 to 20 beds is what they're telling us, I'm hoping the revenue, I'm projecting it to be about $416,000 based upon the number we want them to pay to be in our facility. So there is some revenue there. It's limited because it's only that 10 to 20 at any given time. The mental health unit we discussed, we're unable to meet the requirements for medical support in our jail, so this was pretty much disregarded right away. Special population, we talked about maybe we could bring in a pod full of females because there seemed to be a shortage for female detention in the state. But given the fact that the housing unit for females only allows for 10 beds, it's not a huge financial revenue stream for us because of that only having 10 beds available. And that's after Cass County leaves us. Currently, I don't know if we have that many, do we, in for female right now, beds? We have 10 or more?
We have about 10.
Okay.
We have about 10.
And then we had the idea of release planning. There's no current program out there. We didn't even know where to start. It was just an idea that was thrown out there. And there was just an unknown need for release planning because most jails have it within their programming system to build some kind of program release for these individuals when they leave the jail, which we're doing a really good job at, but it's embedded within our program system and most jails already provide it. So the last opportunity we talked about was juvenile corrections here in Crow Wing County. We brought in the DOC juvenile inspector to determine if our jail was even able to provide the service for juvenile. After a walkthrough, Troy and I gave them an idea of how we would bring a juvenile in. We did a complete walkthrough of the process, how we feel it would work. Our jail is actually built in a unique way that allows us to bring juveniles in without much change whatsoever because of some of the maintenance tunnels and the way our pre-book is built. It worked out really well. DOC Juvenile was really impressed with the facility we have. They loved the fact that we had found a way to get juveniles in without having interaction with the adult population. And after doing a walkthrough with them, they discovered that there was very little we had to do. It was mostly curtains, divider walls, and maybe some a gate we would have to put up in the pod to try to keep juveniles off the staircases. So those were some positive things. The one thing they did mention that was a concern was our outdoor rec. With juveniles, you're to provide outdoor rec. For adults, the pods have outdoor rec inside the pod, but it's within the pod itself because it has open air windows at the top you can open and close. Adults, that's considered outdoor rec. The juvenile DOC inspector didn't believe that would fit within the mandate for juveniles, but she said that given the circumstances, what's going on with juvenile corrections right now and the high need, she said no problem with getting a variance from the Department of Public Safety to get a variance to actually open that up and get a variance to allow us to use that as outdoor rec for these juveniles. So that all went well, and so we thought, okay, we do have an option here with juveniles. So we pitched the idea of a 14-bed license for juvenile detention within our facility. The reason why we were discussing 14 beds is because the pods are split on a level, and there's 14 cells on there's actually 16 cells, but 14 usable cells on the main floor, and there's 14 cells on the second floor. So if we utilized each cell with one inmate, which is all we can do for juveniles because they have to have their own cell, we can get 14 in on the first floor. The idea would be to have 8 contracted beds. We would have 2 non-contract beds, and we'd have 4 Crow Wing County beds. And the reason for the 2 non-contract beds, they would be more of an emergency hold. You can pay or you can charge more for a non-contract bed. So if you have a county that's in need because they had a serious incident within their county involving a juvenile and need immediate placement, but they don't have a contract, they'd be able to bring them to us and fill that one of those 2 seats, but also gives us an opportunity to have more space for our own juveniles if we need to bring them here locally in Crow Wing County for those 2 beds.
Andy,
So-
these would be male only, though.
Male only. This is a male only facility. So that was what was pitched, and the DOC agreed that that would be appropriate for what we have in our facility and for size and what we could do for currently right now. There is potential, depending upon how this goes, to add the second floor, another 14 beds at some point in time in the future. But obviously, there's some other things that would have to happen to do that, because anything over 24 beds in a juvenile correctional facility required more employees. So what would be the total revenue opportunity? Based upon the numbers that I was given by some of the other detention centers, we're looking at, if we can have those 8 contracted beds full and we can fill the new contracted beds, we would roughly have a revenue stream of about $1.2 million. There's also I threw in there the savings to levy dollars at $271,000. Currently, right now, we board all of our juveniles elsewhere. We have a contract with Anoka County that's a one-person contract that we pay a year at a time. And if you take all those dollars we spend over every year for juvenile placement outside of Crow Wing County, and we averaged it out over the last 4 years where that number would be, it's that 271 is what our average would be as a possible savings and levy dollars for spending to keep juveniles away from Crow Wing County. So the total proposed savings would be that 1.49, and that's based upon the revenue and the actual savings of the juvenile bed. So this is a breakdown of what I just told you in regards to what we've been spending on juveniles in a correctional facility. As you can see, the bottom is secure and the top is non-secure. This is all our numbers from Crow Wing County. So we currently have 1 in non-secure, and we have 29, or we've had 29 youth this year in secure. So that's a total for the entire year. So we've spent $230,000 on juveniles as of today, on juveniles to be in a correctional facility secure. As you can see, the past in 2020, 21, 22, and 23, that number has been trending up and down. Last year was $544,000. But we did an average to make it more uniform to what we do for tracking, and that's where that 277 came from.
So
This is some of the other
Andy-
detention centers in regards
Andy?
to what they, sure.
Real quick, could you go back to the other screen? Up on top, you show a full year, and then 24, you show Q1. Are the others Q1, or are they for a full year?
They're for a full year.
So that's why the numbers are significantly different. than
Right.
Like Q, okay.
Exactly. So these are the other facilities that we utilize for juvenile corrections in the state of Minnesota. It's Northwest Juvenile, which is Bemidji, and then Anoka, which is we have our contract with, and that's in Lionel Lakes. As you can see, the contract rates for Bemidji is $329, that's a day, and the Anoka is $325 a day. That's pretty much standard across the state in that $325 range. I chose the lower of the two at $325 of what we would contract with if we decided to go this route. Non-contract bed, those 2 beds I was telling you about that we would keep open that are non-contract, we could charge anywhere from $372 to $395 to be consistent with the other detention centers in the state. We can also charge back for transportation for juveniles if needed at $30 an hour, plus any guarding we'd have to be at those facilities would be $30 an hour. Any medical cost expenses, obviously, just like we do our adults, we charge those back to the facility that the agency that's brought their juvenile to us. The full $544,000 for 2023 was paid out to these 2 facilities, Bemidji and Lionel Lakes. $119,000 of that was guaranteed in a contract bed to Anoka County. So that's something that we pay all the time, but we're paying non-contract prices for our other 3 juveniles at these other facilities, which is at $320 or $372 or $395 a day. So what do we need to do if we want to open up a juvenile correctional facility in Crow Wing County? We need to hire these new employees based upon DOC standards. Anything less than 24 juveniles requires a DOC a director for the juvenile wing. We'd also have to have additional 4 correctional officers, more so than we currently have. The requirement is DOC that we have to have 2 COs in a pod with the juveniles at all times, except for on lockdown during the evening hours. We accounted for that with the 4 correctional officers. We would need a programmer for purposes of long-term secure detention. We need to build programs for these kids with schooling, different programs like CD, and anything else that may come up. Obviously, we'll have to build different programs as things go on, kind of similar to what we do in our adult wing. So we also need a dedicated medical staff nurse, and we need at least 1 doctor. We discussed the idea of using our current doctors One had no interest, one was on the fence in regards to it, but we'd have to have someone dedicated to it, so we determined that we would have to find a doctor that was dedicated to juvenile, and so we figured that into this cost of what it would take us to start this. What we'd also have to utilize is 4 current correctional officers to also run that portion of the juvenile center. So that's where, and then we have to have an advisory committee based upon what DOC is telling us, and has no cost to us. It just involves members of the Crow Wing County employee group, such as the Sheriff's Office, Community Service, Public Health, and Juvenile Probation, and would help guide the ideas and the direction of the juvenile center. Some additional costs that we looked into was food service. Of course, with juveniles, you have to provide a different diet plan. So more so than your adults, the $61,000 is addition to what we would normally pay to have an adult in the facility. So the $61,000 is an increase. And then the school and program costs for the juveniles for supplies. We could not get an accurate number from any of the school districts to tell us what that would be. So we threw in $20,000 to cover those expenses. The jail maintenance upgrades. The upgrades that we would need, like I said before, is the curtains, some of the coverings on the outside windows to keep adults from looking in. The gate, we had maintenance go through and determine the cost of all that, and they did the build out in regards to doing diagrams and stuff of what we need to change, and they got back to me at $39,000 for that upgrade to make it available for the juveniles. So the breakdown, our estimated average expenses would be $1.2 million, revenue opportunity of just about the same. The key factor here is the juvenile expenditures for out-of-county placement being $271,000, currently what we pay to keep juveniles outside of Crow Wing County currently. So that total difference between what we would cost us to open a juvenile center, the revenue we'd get in return, and the difference of what we spend to have juveniles placed elsewhere, we would roughly have a savings of $231,000. So those are the ideas that we threw out there. The only one that we seemed that would be a viable option for us in regards to benefit to Crow Wing County is the juvenile center. Even though the revenue is not what we would like to see, obviously we've determined that trying to replace the $995,000 we made from Cass County in their contract is just not possible. The adult inmates that are available for boarding out there are getting less and less across the country and across the state because most judges and jails, they're not holding anyone anymore. They're releasing a lot of people. It's just our numbers pre-COVID, we're averaging about 135 of our own inmates a year. We're down to average of 70. So those numbers are just dropping drastically. So trying to find another agency to bring us large numbers like Stearns County is what we discovered very difficult, if not impossible. So the idea behind the juvenile center is that it would support our local community. It's not a huge revenue stream, but it would support the families that have juveniles that are in corrections here, and that they would be able to come see their child on a regular basis in our facility, and that our social workers and our juvenile probation would be able to spend more time working with those because they're locally here. I can't give you an idea of what the savings would be for our social workers not have to travel and our juvenile probation not have to travel to go see these juveniles or work with them elsewhere, but there has to be some savings there that we just don't see. So, questions?
Mr. Chair, question.
Yes.
So, well, first I will give you credit for trying to come up with some alternatives with us losing the contract with Cass. The only thing is Andy, did all these numbers that you put together, did you put these together? Did you run them by finance?
Yes.
Is it all your, this isn't just a slam dunk. Because I don't think you could sit here and look at me and say, it's a guaranteed that we're going to have revenue over and above of $231,000. That's not a guarantee. You can't.
No, it's not.
No. So it is a risk for us to go into this venture and have the possibility of this being a positive, money-wise. So how much would how much would the outlay be over and above? Obviously, there's some numbers like that 39,000 and would we have to have more corrections officers, more than we actually have now? And so we'd be hiring more people?
Yes, if I can go back. These are the new players that we'd have to operate the jail.
Yeah.
So we'd have to have 7 new employees to operate the juvenile center. That's that director, 4 correctional officers, 1 programmer, 1 medical staff, and 1 doctor. Those are the additional individuals that we'd have to hire. The doctor obviously would be a contract, it wouldn't be a true employee, but it's still something we'd have to pay for that juvenile wing.
And to me, it'd be a leap of faith by the county board to spend more money and to hire more people. And then with the potential of making 231,000. So I don't know. I guess I'm a little skeptical about it because it's not a for sure deal. I mean, we could lose money on this.
Yes, we could.
Yeah. So
I ran everything through the business agent in our office and across the street on what we currently pay. I tried to get as close as I could to the numbers. I mean, I went so far as to throw cents in there because I wanted to make sure we were trying to get as close as we could. But these are all guesses. This is it's an opportunity, I think, for Crow Wing County. The biggest opportunity is to try to bring our juveniles home. But I don't see this as a huge revenue stream for us. It's more of a break even. I just think we have a facility that's available, given what's going on with the adults. There's room for us to provide this service in Crow Wing County because of the room in the jail. And I think it's good use of the buildings that we've got here in Crow Wing County we pay for. I mean, we still service those buildings. We have to heat them. We still have to pay power and so forth to be there. Because the other option is to just shut them down. And so
I think, Andy, it shows like what has just happened with this contract with Cass is when, nobody was here when those buildings, none of the commissioners were here when those buildings were built, but when they were built, I think they were built with an agreement with Cass at the time and thinking that, okay, we're going to need this space because we're going to have, and now that has gone haywire. And so I just wonder if we should just, we have the facility, so that's fine, but why do we think we always have to try to find other prisoners? We can just kind of mothball things and focus on Crow Wing County. Just because we have the space, that doesn't mean we have to run after other prisoners, I guess. I don't know. I guess I'd like to hear from I shouldn't say old, but the old, he is. The old county administrator, because he's got 30 plus years of experience, and I'd like to hear from our new county administrator and just see what their thoughts are. But I just feel like I just don't know if I'm a yes or a no, because I just think it's kind of a risky proposition. So I don't know, whoever wants to go first.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just a couple of comments. First, just so I'm clear, Andy, you're saying that the proposed revenue from a juvenile center would be about 270-some thousand? 230-some thousand.
31.
That's the revenue that a juvenile center could generate. We're still
if it's
1.2 million short of the revenue that we're losing from the Cass County contract. So this isn't necessarily saying we're going to get an additional $230-some thousand dollars. We're just saying now our gap is only $900-some thousand. So you've got the revenue source of a juvenile center. How are we proposing to make up some of the difference that we still are going to have in the expense side of the equation? Because I'm seeing an additional $200,000 worth of revenue for juvenile detention, which covers some of those costs that are associated with it, but it's not making up the difference that we're losing in the Cass contract, and there's nothing that's showing
No.
how we're going to try to bridge that gap that we now have on the adult side. Those are my two takeaways that I saw from the presentation.
Yeah, like I said before, we've discovered through a lot of diligent work with other counties that we are just not going to be able to find a partner to replace what we lost with Cass County.
Correct. So how are we going to bridge that gap? If we can't find a partner to fill it, what are your proposals for shortening the expense side? How are we going to, it does make no sense to hire 7 new people to run a juvenile facility if we are already short on the other side too as well. That's where I think we still have some work that needs to be done in that regard. Mr. Hool, I don't know what else you would like to add. You've been involved in this process from the get-go as well.
I agree. Could you go back to the slide that shows the number of staff? That one. Does it only take 4 correctional officers to run a juvenile detention facility?
No, it doesn't.
No. And so if you took all of the correctional officers' salaries that would be put to this purpose and added that cost in, there is no revenue here at all. Because you have to add that cost in, because Plan B, the alternative, is to remove that cost entirely, isn't it? And so when you're looking at the apple to the apple, there's no revenue. There's no revenue here. And to Deb's point, if you don't have revenue, this is just a math problem. Revenue or expense. If we can't solve it on the revenue side, then you must solve it on the expense side. I don't think that that should be exclusively from the sheriff's office. When we added that revenue, there were many people who benefited from that revenue, other SMT business units, because that money went into the general fund and was not given to the sheriff's office to support their operations. It was given to the organization to support our operations. And so I also don't think it is just their responsibility to absorb all of the costs associated with it. I think that's unfair and doesn't take into account the history of what was done with the revenue that we got from their sacrifice of taking additional work on. That's what I think.
So I agree with that. I think we might have to, I'm kind of leaning towards where we might have to try to figure out how to slim down, and if that's, there's always a big turnover in correctional officers. Maybe we have to just mothball part of and because there just isn't going to be the prisoners and the revenue for the jail. So, I don't know. I'm pretty lukewarm on this, to tell you the truth. So.
Well, I was here the last time we had a juvenile center, and we couldn't keep it full. And the $200,000 is with it being full. I'm more than leery about this proposal, because like you just said, this is not all the people you need to run it, so you're going to have more costs than what this shows. And we had to close down a juvenile center before because we couldn't keep it filled. And I asked if anybody had the numbers from the previous one, and they don't seem to be available. But I think, that would have been a real important part of this, to be able to look at that and see why it didn't work. And I know the other one was more than 24 people. It could have more than 24 people, so I don't know how that plays into this, but at this point, I'm not for this, just because of the previous.
Well, just to put it in perspective, I did actually add the current employees. We have 4 correctional officers that we currently employ at $397,000 that would be moved to juvenile side, and I incorporated that in the total cost. So that
$31,000
$31,000 is Still, it'd be our revenue based upon pulling the 4 that we currently have in adult and moving them over to juvenile. So I did account for that. Every one that accounted for in these numbers was everything we need to run it. But obviously, $231,000 would be our revenue stream if we did this. The concept I have in regards to this is if we get the juvenile center up and running and we get a year in our belt and we come comfortable with it and we can see where we're at, there's potential to open up another 14 beds on the second level in our pod, which would bring in another $1 million. And but that's down the road. That would be like year 2 or year 3, depending upon how the first year went. So that's kind of my perspective of if this works out. And I've talked to other juvenile centers. I know Troy has. We've brought in DOC. There is a overwhelming need for juvenile corrections right now, more so than ever. I don't know why the trend is going up. I really can't understand it. But if you look back at our numbers, what we currently see in Crow Wing County, we were at $544,000 spent last year, and we're already at $260 around there right now. We're only in the first quarter. I don't know where that's going to go. Our biggest dilemma we have right now is we have a contract with Anoka that we have a 1-year out clause. It's a 5-year contract. It's good till 2027, and we have to give them a 1-year notice to get out of it. So the only way we could save that $119,000 we spent on that contract is to give them 1-year notice. So if you take out that 119, because we have to stay with that contract for a year, that number drops until we can get rid of that contract. So if it's something that we want to go down that road, we have to give them notice so we can get out of it, so we can have that savings, because we can't get out of it until we hit that 1 year. So that's a concern. And then the licensing process, I talked to the DOC juvenile inspector. Once we agree to do the program and start it, from the process, the start of the licensing until the training is complete, she says you're looking over 6 months. So to actually initiate something for 2025, we would need to know literally by June if this was the direction we wanted to go, so that we could hopefully have something started right away in 2025, so we could see these kind of numbers, because every month we wait, that number drops.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Andy, one thing that I haven't seen is, I know the directive that we've given is to look for funding, other funding that will support the jail. But what I haven't seen is, because one of the options is to do nothing, to Commissioner Coring's point, and I haven't seen a financial analysis of what that would look like if we were to do that. And I would like that information before we look at doing this possibility. I think this is an opportunity. I won't disagree with you on that, and I think you guys have done some good work on this. And I think that there is an increased need for a juvenile facility. But I do think that we need to see all the options available, and unfortunately, one of them is to do nothing or to kind of go backwards, I guess. I don't know, that's not a nice term to use, but I think that that's a possibility.
I did throw some numbers together in regards to zero borders.
Is there anything else that you didn't show us, Andy?
I knew you'd ask this question, so I thought I'd throw this slide in there. Our population on average is 70 inmates. I told you that before.
Yep.
If we closed Echo, Fox, and Gulf, we potentially have a reduction of 33 employees in the jail. That's $1.7 million savings. I don't like to show you this because some new information came to light recently from DOC. We had a DOC inspector come in on Wednesday of last week to our jail, and there was a lot of changes in the 2911 rules that require us to provide more oversight from our COs on the inmates than we ever had before, affecting our number requirements for staff in the jail. Don't know what the exact number is going to be at this point, but I know it's going to require us to provide more COs in the jail than we currently have, based upon what they just hit us with. We're still working through the details on that, but Troy put together some numbers in regards, I just got this morning, in regards to how we fare in regards to the counties around us that are similar size. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but our jail is the 5th largest in the state. That's compared to Hennepin, Ramsey, some of the, big jails out there, Sherburne County. They are huge jails, and we're 5th overall out of the entire state. So we have a very large jail, but we have the least amount of COs working for us to any of those jails. So we're running a crew that's doing a great job with what they have. But DOC sees that, and they know that there's some deficiencies in what we're doing and how we're doing it, and they finally called us on it. So those numbers we're gonna have to put together and get them to you. So even if we close some pods, that number of 33 employees is not gonna be our reduction. It's gonna be less than that. I just don't know what that number is. I literally just had the conversation this morning about what we're gonna have to do. I'll have to bring that back to you at a different time. Some of the stuff that DOC hit us with, they're actually telling us that we're potentially gonna be out of compliance. We're talking about some licensing issues. It was a bad Monday, let's just say that. So realistically, this is what I was hoping that, we could talk about, but those numbers drastically changed. My thought process was that we would keep our borders and to still receive the revenue that we currently get from the other counties that are bringing borders to us. And if we did do a reduction, we would do 1 or 2 pods, which would still save us some staffing. We could reduce, which, given attrition, like Paul talked about, we could probably get down to reasonable numbers without any layoffs, any letting anyone go in about 2 years. We'd be at the numbers that we need to be. But now with these new DOC rules, I don't know what that number is.
So,
And
Mr. Chair, if I could just follow up
Yeah.
real quick. So they're imposing a higher ratio than what we currently have of staff to
Yes.
inmates.
Yes.
What's DOC's ratio? Realizing that the state doesn't hold itself to the same standard that they
course you
do
are
our
correct.
county jails.
You are correct. We've had that discussion, and there's really no response. We don't, they'll tell us they understand and they know there's a problem, but that's as far as it goes.
Yeah, I did get
Come up to the mic.
I did get a chance to talk to our Inspector General, and evidently they hired a bunch of Inspector Generals now to really go over these 2911 rules, and they blamed it on the legislators and said that, hey, if you need changes, you need to talk to your legislators, because the 2911 rules are going to be revamped as they look at it, and they are going to these inspector generals that are probably a dozen of them are going to go around the state, and they're going to allegedly hold people accountable to these 2911 rules. So
I'm sorry again.
Okay.
And I would argue with that, because the only one bringing information to change to the legislators are those inspectors. It's not coming from you guys.
right.
No.
So
Yep, I had a lengthy conversation with him, and very disappointing as we left it.
So as it pertains to this Inspector General, have they put anything in writing to you, and or is it all verbally? And if they have put anything into writing of telling you what they're thinking that we need to do, I would like that to be shared with the county board. I wanna see that in writing of what they're proposing or what they're telling you. Or if they're just
Absolutely.
telling you that verbally,
I have a follow-up meeting with our DOC inspector this Friday, and I
Okay.
plan to, kind of walk through some of this.
does he put anything in writing?
Nothing yet, because they haven't written the inspection results yet.
Okay.
Troy, we might want to share with them too that newsletter that they're sending out now, supposedly trying to be more friendly for correspondence with us. So we will share that with you.
We need to have that information.
We do have from the 2018 and 2020 DOC inspections asking that we increase our staffing. I have copies of those too that I can share with you guys. But yeah.
And if you could
both
just
those-
send that to the county administrator and she can send it out to us. So,
Mr. Chair, Andy or Troy, where are we with the federal inmate potential? Is that still something in the works, or?
I'm filling out the application, like he was saying, it's pretty lengthy, and we're having to collect a lot of data, financial data, so historical data and projections. And I've been working with Dan Axted with the Sheriff's Office.
on that, Troy?
Pardon me?
Do we have an end date on that?
An end date?
It's, our problem is there's a lot of numbers that aren't numbers we normally would have readily accessible.
Yep.
So Dan has been doing his best. I mean, it's taken almost 2 weeks for him to go through. If I could show you, I mean, the application is thicker than this, and it's in depth. I mean, when I say that they're asking for individual persons, their benefit packages and so forth, it's extensive, way more than we ever would have imagined to get this. And they use that information to provide proof that the number we're asking for our daily rate is legitimate and not just something we pull out of the thin air. And I think they're going to be surprised that the number that we're going to throw them is really accurate. It's significantly higher than we charge for a standard boarder, if you factor in everything they're trying to factor in. So those numbers are just taking a long time, because not only Dan doesn't have all that stuff, he's working with finance to get the other information they're asking for, and it's a combination of putting a lot of numbers together and make sure we're accurate with all that stuff. So it's taking way longer than I would expected it to, but, I mean, there was a first initial phase where they actually came in and did the inspection of our building to verify it. Then there was the preliminary application, and then now we're on to the main application. This is like a 3 or 4 step process to get this started. I think there's some potential here, not like the Cass County, but there's potential to make some serious money. I'm believing that we're probably going to be around that $500,000 a year in revenue stream from the U.S. Marshals, but obviously it's nowhere near the nearly $1 million we lost.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Paul, is it okay?
yeah. no,
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you letting me talk. Just kind of looking at it, I think the jail worked fine while it worked. I mean, it was built, it was full, it was making money, it was bringing money into the county. The market has changed the way it looks out there. And who's being put in jails and stuff like that. One of the advantages we have here is ours all paid for. We're not out there doing bonding and stuff for jails. So from my paradigm, it's looking at it from, yeah, we lost this revenue. What are we going to do with that? Minimize the expense. We still have the building all paid for. Have it ready, and when those opportunities come, jump on those opportunities. I don't know if I feel really well about throwing a bunch more money at it in order to hope there's an opportunity there just to break even. And that's where my opinion is on it at this time. Paul?
I forgot what I was going to say now. I should have wrote
Really?
it down. Yeah.
I know.
Sorry, yeah.
And Mr. Chair, the reason why I'm driven to try to make this work is because I truly believe it's another opportunity for us to do some services here in Crow Wing County for our community that we can't provide, which is the juvenile correction side. Just impacting families. Obviously, it's not going to be a huge revenue stream for us, but there's some opportunities there to support our community directly right here at home with the building that's already existing. Like you said, it's already paid for.
Yeah.
So what can we do with it to maximize its use and benefit the community?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I don't think it has to be one or the other. I don't think it has to be juvenile facility or reduce some of the current existing costs that we're dealing with as well. These two things could go hand in hand. You could, if you chose, look at opening a juvenile center and look at cost reductions in the jail as well as other areas across the organization as well. Like you said, some of that slimming down that would need to occur. I think part of what you have to decide is if you have interest in pursuing a juvenile detention facility, and you're hearing that there is a need in our community for that purpose. We think there might be opportunity for filling some of those beds on a contracted basis, but that is the unknown factor, is how much would that be able to do? And as Andy mentioned, it's not going to make up all the difference, and it's not going to show returns right away. This is probably a multi-year process if you are looking in that regard.
And if you want an answer on that from me, the answer is no. I'm not interested in it now. Certainly keep an open mind, but if you're asking for an answer today from me, I'd say no.
And I'm the opposite. Sorry, Paul.
No, that's okay.
Because I think it is an opportunity, and I think to Administrator Erickson's point, we can still reduce on the one side and try to build up this program on the other side. So I think there's a balance that can be had there, and we can see what this opportunity brings to us. If it doesn't come to fruition, then we go heavy on the reduction side. But I think there's a combination that can be done here that would make this, we could get some history to go with to your point, Andy, of a 1 year look at where we're at with the juvenile program, maybe a year and a half or 2 years, I don't know, but I think that there is the opportunity for us to do this and make it work.
There's one no, one yes, so now where are we going?
Yeah, just so I can just share this, I mean, I don't think we should give up on it just quite yet. I mean, we're doing such good things over in the jail. We have a great jail facility. We have great staff. We want to, obviously we want to continue that and offer those services that we've been offering and all these good programs that we offer to our inmates here as well. And I think that we can do it. You're right. These numbers probably aren't even accurate. I'm not sure what they're going to be. DOC keeps moving the bar on us. I know that there's going to be a study done this summer from a national level. They're going to come to Minnesota and do a jail study for a regional jail study. And I don't know what that's going to produce yet. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns. But I don't think that I don't think we should just give up on it quite yet. I don't feel like we're gonna blow a bunch of money on this. I'm relatively confident that we can make a go of it.
And we recognize the risk involved with opening up a juvenile facility, which is why we're doing the bare minimum for the requesting and keeping it at a 14-bed facility and not making it at a grander scale due to that risk.
So when you're looking at losing, what, $1 million in revenue from our borders from Cass, is that what you're looking at?
Correct.
Even if we had that $1 million in revenue, there was still a cost in that $1 million of revenue.
Yes.
There was, and then we'd end up with a net
Right.
after we're done. Do we have any idea what that is, or what that was?
I do not have that number.
So we really know what our real cost in operation was to get that $1 million of revenue.
There's obviously cost, I don't have that.
I mean, you
figure of what
got
it
staff,
would be.
you got meals, you got whatever else that goes with that.
Because see, the cost of an inmate changes daily based upon how many inmates we have in our facility. So any given day, it changes. So to determine that number, it would take some time to try to determine what we were looking at in regards to boarding Cass counties and what our costs were and what we were making in revenue. Yeah, it did take some time to try to figure that out.
It was just a number that, thinking of it as like business, you'd have a revenue coming in, you've got a cost of generating that revenue. And there might be some variables in there, but there's gonna be a base cost of, people, building, plant, heat, lights.
Well, the cost of each inmate will be more than what we'll generate in revenue in all cases.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Are you able to read the tea leaves yet or not?
I need a couple more leaves.
I thought I was pretty clear.
Intent to come and kind of read the tea leaves, or was it just informational?
Yeah, like I said before, we have a lot of work into what we've done so far to try to make this work. There's a lot of more work to be done, but if it's not going to happen, obviously, how much more energy and staff time should we exert to try to make this happen? And my biggest concern is, like I told you before, the timelines in regards to a 6-month window to get licensing and training done, to even start a program, and then the 1 year out for our contract with Anoka, which is going to run into 2025, no matter what we do at this point in time. So if we wait until fall to make a decision based upon what of our where we set our levy at, or where our cuts can be made, and it'll be 2026 before we could even think about starting a juvenile center, if we decide to go that way after budget and we determine where we're sitting financially in the jail. So I'd like to get a direction, either we're going to start something soon, or let's table it until the fall to make another decision later, or we don't have any desire to go that direction.
You were just talking about that new mandates, pretty much, you're going to need more people. Now, was this study done that you just presented before you heard about this, and are we going to need more than the 8 employees that you already talked about?
That I don't know, because literally we just discussed this. This just came down yesterday. So I wish I would have had that information a week ago, and I could have provided that, but I don't. And it's going to take some time to figure that out. So will it affect juvenile? Maybe. I don't know for certain. I haven't reached out to her to ask that question, but I know it's going to affect us on the adult side for sure. I just don't know what it is. So I'm just looking for a direction. You know, what would you like me to do?
I
Mr.
don't know
Chair.
that I'm for or against, but I would like to see some of the other options before we, kind of decide which direction we're going to go. As in the federal, I know that that's in the works, but it'd be nice to see option A, B, C, or something.
Okay, because right now, realistically, the U.S. Marshal contract is one of the options. We don't really know where we're going to be at. The Stearns County contract we have with them, that's pretty much a given. We can pretty much see the writing on the wall in regards to where that's going to be. But those are our 2 other options to see where it pans out for us revenue-wise. The others are pretty insignificant in regards to what kind of funding we could see from those, other than the opportunity with this jail juvenile center, which isn't a huge revenue stream, but it's an opportunity for the community. So wait and see until the U.S. Marshal contract is complete, or?
And I'm sure you have no idea how long that would be, but
Yeah, I have no idea.
I think it would be important to have that information before we make a definite decision on which way we're going to go. That's just my take on it.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, you may.
if we looked at putting together some of the information that's just risen yesterday, when you found out some of these new requirements that are going to be here, to Commissioner Franzine's point that there are some things that are not included in this proposal as of yet, we could look at pulling that information together, providing it as part of the review of also what it would look like if we added the program Commissioner Hoag was talking about, but more so some of the expense reductions on the other side, on the adult side, in conjunction with the potential for a juvenile facility. We could return at another committee of the whole, or as part of our budget process in a budget meeting when we're looking at the 2025 budget. I would suggest that we're probably getting to the point where we could include a couple of options in the 25 budget. And looking at this as a whole, as Mr. Hool said earlier, this isn't all going to be on the sheriff's office to have to come up with some of these reductions. That $1 million shortfall that we're talking about is going to have to be spread across other areas. I would suggest we could come to the first review of our budget during a budget committee meeting and look at some of these options at that point in time, if that is okay with all
That
of you.
makes perfect sense to me. Thank you.
Will that work for you?
Yes, we'll
Okay.
make it happen.
Okay? All
Thank
right,
you.
that's
Yep.
what we'll do.
Does that mean more information, or?
That
Because
means
the-
more information for those who need it?
Yeah.
Yep, and I'm one. Yep, I need more information.
Yes.
So we'll bring something to the budget in regards to we'll keep you up to date on what's going on with the new changes through whatever documentation they send us to give you a concept, at least preliminary, before we just start talking about what the budget breakdown will be. But we'll come up with some ideas in regards to reduction to try to save some funds in the jail. Maybe we'll get more clarity in regards to the any other costs that might come down with the juvenile center. But I'm thinking, if anything, maybe one additional staff member more than what we currently are looking at with this group for the juvenile wing. So we'll hopefully have all that. I just want to let you know that if we move off into the fall and we start talking about budget, we're now moving a potential juvenile center off into mid-2025 or even 2026.
And I don't know that we've ever, at least I've never seen any, when you say that this inspector is coming in and telling us, I don't know that I've ever seen any paperwork on that, but I guess in the future, I would like to see any correspondence that they have with you and saying, hey, we've inspected your jail, now you got to provide this, this, and this, because we're the ones that have to authorize the money to make any changes there. So I think we need to be aware of that. And if they're making some changes that I think the county board thinks this is absolutely ridiculous, then we need to call in our legislative delegation in here and put them on notice and say, what the hell is going on? You're putting a lot of more mandates on the county that we're having to go to the property taxpayers and put on their property taxes to pay for all this crap. So,
I agree with you 110%. The support we could get from you to help manage these things that are being told to us would be greatly helpful.
Okay.
I think that'd be a big part of it. And, you know, we only have so much weight to throw around in regards to trying to get changes
I'm
to
trying
state
to
level.
lose some weight,
So any help you can get to
Yeah,
get
throw
the
it that way if
legislation.
you wouldn't mind, Paul.
So any help you can give to give the legislation to help support us and,
Yes.
you know, try to rein in the DOC in regards to some of the stuff they're throwing at us would be greatly helpful. We'd appreciate that.
I can send you a breakdown of a lot of the changes that have impacted the jail.
absolutely. And always run it through Deb, our county administrator, and then she'll forward it on to us. I think that'd probably be the best.
Okay. Anything else from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next at 9:30, we have the 371 study update, so. They must have already done theirs because we're already out of time for them. No.
Well, go ahead, Bob, or Tom.
Come on up.
Right up front here.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Well, they're taking their seats. I'll maybe tee this up. We have been working with, since last fall, actually. MnDOT has initiated a corridor study plan, corridor study for the 371 corridor from the southern limits of Baxter up to Nisswa at County Road 18. And we've been working closely with those cities, their planners, and Bob Rogers from Bolton and Mink is our consultant, the same consultant we have for our comprehensive plan, which really ties nicely to what we're doing. And then Tom Cruikshank from MnDOT Planner are here to give you an update on that work that we've been doing. And I believe, Therese, you have the presentation. Bob, I saw you brought some maps.
Yeah, I think we'll punt on that for
Okay.
now. We'll talk about maybe coming back as we advance. Yeah.
I can hold them. I don't know how long you're going to talk, but, so, thank you very much.
Well, commissioners and staff, thank you for the invitation to allow us to come and talk to you today. If we had a little longer time, and we know that you're short on time this morning, we have a little more in-depth presentation. We're gonna just make it a little bit shorter for you here this morning, kind of in respect of the time. But we really wanted
You're fine. We have all day for you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Really, what we really want to do, as Bob and I were talking back here, is we really just want to give you an overview of where we're at, kind of how we got started, where we're at, and then touch on maybe a couple of important issues for the county board to think about because of the kind of some of the issues that we're dealing with in the First Assessment District area, which is important to you. And again, not just that, because again, there's quite a number of county facilities that intersect with Highway 371 from Baxter all the way up to Nisswa. And we'll touch on, Bob's going to touch on a few of those as we kind of go through our presentation, but it's been 20 years since we looked at the corridor, and as you can imagine, a lot's changed in 20 years. The growth in Baxter has been tremendous. The amount of traffic that this highway carries through this corridor now is exceeding 30,000 vehicles a day. It wasn't designed for that. The commercial development on the south end, that peak traffic volume, and then you get it mixed up on those Wednesday, Thursday, Friday recreational in the summer coming up here starting this weekend. It's a mess. Our crash numbers are high. So as MnDOT, we a couple of years ago said we're going to take another look at the corridor, come up with some safety solutions that we need to deal with, and maybe some longer term vision things. Partner with our partners, the city, the county, cities in the county, and look at maybe some short term solutions, long term, and then we brought Bolton and Mencken to help us kind of guide that process. So I'll let Bob get started, and then commissioners, I want to encourage you as we go through this to please ask us questions if you have any, and then get in the end. We'll kind of tie it off, and we've mentioned to Tim and Matt that perhaps we can come back at another time, maybe later this summer. And I know you guys are going to be busy with budget in the summer. If you have some time, maybe we can do a little workshop with you. We can talk with staff and see, and then we can roll the maps out and maybe dig in with you a little bit. And that's what we've been doing with the cities. And we've already done a workshop with each of the 2 city councils, and that's been really effective to really kind of get their eyes and ears on the on the road, what they're thinking, and then we can have a little more in-depth conversation. So we'll talk later and see if we can come up with something that works.
As you know, we're right in the middle of our comp plan for the county, and we're going kind of deep in that, and we're also looking at transportation as that part of that component, and I think even Tim would attest that we're even looking a deeper dive into multimodal and transportation for the county. So I think it's a real opportunity time to get all that information.
Yeah, exactly.
All that information, Paul, for us.
Yeah, Mr. Exactly.
Information.
Yeah, and the other thing that is going to be of interest to you too, that we're kicking off soon, is that we're going to do actually a regional transportation plan for Region 5, which includes Crow Wing County, and you're all going to get information soon on that too. That's going to kick off very soon here too. So a lot of layers of transportation analysis are going on in the region here. So the timing for all of it is perfect because there's a lot of need for improvements and a lot of interest from the public and so on. So, Bob?
Yeah, and I think it's important. I'm just going to add right before I start into the presentation, how important it is, because the public doesn't recognize that they're moving from one jurisdiction to another when they're traveling the network, right? And so having that collaboration and those ongoing things that the county's doing, that MnDOT's doing, and then also the cities and all too, is so important that, everybody's talking and getting on the same page. So yeah, just commend you on that. But I'm going to run through, I got about a dozen or more slides to just, kind of provide information like Tom had said on where we're at, where we've come really, first of all, what we've done since we kicked things off in the fall to where we're at now, and then a little bit on where we're going with the study as well. So as Tim had really mentioned, right away that MnDOT initiated this study, but then brought in, the study partners, including the county, Region 5, and then the 2 cities as well to, really look at more in depth of what is happening out there on 371. And there's, the opportunity with a 2030, is that correct, Tom? 2030 pavement project that MnDOT does have scheduled for this section of highway. And really then identifying, are there opportunities to incorporate some of the improvements that we identify through this study process into that? I mean, when you start looking and studying transportation improvements, it's not something that just gets then built the next year, right? It takes time to develop these, to vet it all out, to program it, set up design plans, and then ultimately deliver it. So again, 2030 seems like, that's a long time away, but that's going to really come quick for MnDOT and for also the communities out there as well, because there might be some involvement that you all would have as well as the cities with that. So again, it's looking at everything from the mobility and the safety and all. And I just want to point out, just make sure everyone's aware of our study limits. So we are starting basically at the river crossing bridge on our south end up through Baxter, all the way to County Road 18 in Nisswa. And so, we know that this, roadway serves many different purposes. It's a principal arterial, but it serves local traffic, it serves, regional traffic, it serves a ton of seasonal variation in traffic and all that too. So there's a lot of different factors that come into play. So some of the study goals when we first kicked this off was really to have a better understanding of not just how cars and trucks necessarily move on here, but also how do people that come up here, that live up here, that seasonally, call this home, that come up for a week, like my family, how do we use the network? And it can be driving on Highway 371, it can be trying to run across 371 at different times of the day to get to destinations. And so we are really looking at a multimodal kind of corridor needs. What are those future improvements? Develop a set of recommendations for the corridor that may be able to be implemented more in that shorter term, but then also what's the ultimate vision? That's something that could happen over a number of years, even potentially a number of decades. In some cases, if you're trying to do some very significant improvements. I mean, we've got a new interchange being proposed out here that has been in the making for a long, long time. That's not something that just all of a sudden the county decided to do a study, write a grant, and then get money. That's been talked about for a long time, as you're all very well aware of. So, and then to also, like I said, inform that upcoming project. But we've kind of put things into 3 phases. The first phase was kicked off, kind of later in 23, and it was really kind of understanding the background, getting a lot of public input, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And now we're kind of towards the end of phase 2, where we're kind of developing and evaluating corridor recommendations. And then we'll move into phase 3, which will kind of be what the final implementation plan is and a report that will come along with the study. So as I said, in that first phase was very heavy on kind of some outreach and hearing from businesses and residents in the area, some of the other public stakeholders as well, with the cities, working with their city councils. And so we did have a pretty robust engagement plan that we rolled out. We sent out over 2,000 mailers. We had over 5,500 people visit our website, which was remarkable. That was fantastic. We had an online survey that got filled out by almost 1,900 people, and so that was really great. And we also had a couple other community events where we were at had a couple of display boards at the Crow Wing County Fair. We were at Baxter one night for the Night to Unite. Tom was wonderful on a radio interview to get some word out and all too. So there were a number of things we did in terms, of getting the word out with newsletters and social media and all of that, and it shows up in our numbers. And so what did we hear? We heard a lot of kind of, I think, what we'd all expect. We heard that safety's probably the number one issue on the corridor, just, whether you're traveling along it, whether you're trying to cross over it, whether you are a vehicle or whether you are a biker or a pedestrian trying to use the transportation network in this area. And so as you really look at those top 3 on our list here, they're kind of a little bit interrelated when you've got, intersection safety, you've got, I didn't advance that one, I advanced mine. I got 2 things going on because I got notes, sorry. Help me out.
Help them out, Tom. Give them some direction.
Right. So you got congestion, you've got vehicle flow, and you've got intersection safety. Those are really kind of all interrelated. So very, very much that is one of the top priorities, is safety along the corridor. And then, we heard a lot about access and a little bit about mobility and things of that nature too. So we don't want to overlook those things. We do have a 4-lane divided facility out here. In just a second, I'll talk a little bit about some of our analysis, but, we're really not talking about a sustained congestion problem. We have peaks, absolutely, but we really more have a sustained safety problem on the corridor that we're really trying to identify, where some, strategic locations can be improved to, enhance that. But, a number of different things, were brought up by the public as well with, access to businesses and neighborhoods, lighting, you name it, even some aesthetic type of items. Move on here. So here's one of those kind of analysis pieces just to give you a little bit of background. Again, you all live this on a day-to-day basis, so maybe this doesn't come as a great surprise. But through a 5-year period, we had over 600 crashes, reported crashes, and that's important to say because again, if you end up getting in a little fender bender and you just exchange information with people and be on your way, no one knows about that, and we know that goes on the corridor as well. But we had over 600 reported crashes. Now, 90% of those happened in our southern part of our corridor, in the Baxter area, probably very much attributed to, a lot of the signals and just the higher congestion that is experienced kind of on that southern portion. But 72% were rear end crashes, another 11% were angle crashes, and those are the ones we kind of get a little bit more, more serious kind of conditions out of. So those are the ones we're trying to correct as well. A couple key areas for the county as it relates. At the Nashway intersection, there was a fatality there reported in our period. The segment of 77 approaching 371 up in the Nisswa area has a critical crash rate, and that's really a formula based on the number of crashes and the type of crashes and all. But it is greater than 1, and when you get a critical crash index greater than 1, that's really showing a sustained and a substantiated crash condition and safety concern. So another key location we're looking at. And then just some other areas, with the frequent, access that's on the corridor. Whenever you have additional access points, you create potential conflicts. And again, a lot of our crashes occurred at those access points, and that can be a private drive to a business or residence, or it can be a public street intersection for those access points. And then lastly, just, in the late fall, we did, right at the north end of kind of the Baxter commercial strip there, have a pedestrian struck that was killed during our study time. So it kind of, again, sheds light of why are we doing this, and that's one of the reasons we are studying this, is because we're trying to make sure that we're providing a safe condition and efficient condition for people to move along and across the corridor. Another item is just on that mobility. So generally, traffic volumes range anywhere from the lower teens, 12, 13,000 vehicles a day to over 30,000 vehicles daily. And, again, that is an average. We know that there are those seasonal peaks that it exceeds that as well. So through the kind of the first assessment district, we're more in the upper teens to the low 20s is kind of the traffic volumes that we have out there. The intersection level of service analysis that we looked at, just kind of level of delays, we found that all intersections as a whole operate at acceptable levels, but we do have some side street, kind of approaches where if you're trying to get on or across, people are having to wait a little bit longer and, getting to a point where then people start to take chances, right? They get impatient, they don't want to wait, and they see a little gap and they're thinking, I can make that, and they, kind of go for it. And that's sometimes what causes some of our problems as well. And then, again, not that this is a surprise to you, but we have those greater spikes, kind of during the summer seasonal, and then really the Sunday PM peak we found to be the highest kind of volume along the corridor, and that really becomes evident when you're talking about some of the signalized intersections through that Baxter area. And so, and then just lastly, we want to not look at just what's happening today, but we want to look out a number of years, and so we have forecasted traffic, and we have annual growth rates somewhere in that 0.5% to around 2%, and that can change, pretty quickly. That can change because of, a few years ago, we know that people really stopped driving because they weren't going to work as much. But we can also have land use changes, and I know you're going through a comprehensive plan process, and all of a sudden, if there's more land that really becomes attractive for development, and all of a sudden you drop in, a whole bunch of new residential units or more commercial, destinations and all that, 2% is maybe not enough in some areas where it can really go up as well.
Yeah, and we're actually seeing that in the southern part of Baxter along Highland Scenic. Now that they've got utilities down there, the city is seeing a lot of interest. So a lot more pressure on County Road 48 coming up. So we're talking about growth rates in the teens to 20+%.
Yeah, we dialed it down a little bit. I think we were talking with some of the city staff and said, yeah, but let's be realistic. Yeah.
The thing is, the impact on the highway is going to really ramp up more quickly than we think. So,
but it is going to be higher than those numbers in that area for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about access and access management, and before maybe even I talk about the text on the side. Just this is a snapshot kind of in an area from just north of kind of the county road, the Pine Beach area. We've got a tremendous amount of access in this couple of mile segment, and what we're showing there, the green circles there, are full access points where someone from a side street or wherever can make any movement, left turns, right turns, all the way across. And things of that nature. To the red dots or kind of half circles there are probably more like driveways. Because of the center median, they can't make a full movement, but it's more of a right in, right out condition. And then we've got J turns, and that's something new that's been introduced to this corridor within the last handful of years. And, you know, we've had some initial feedback, just looking at more recent crash history since that's been implemented. And I think, you know, from MnDOT's standpoint, there's been some real positives with that. We know that there was some growing pains with people, you know, learning to navigate them, and, you know, some of the events that happened up at BIR, and some of the traffic issues that happened in that first season or two. But, you know, we are seeing a tremendous amount of safety benefit from those. So that is one thing that this study is doing a lot of, is looking at access management and where we can make changes to, you know, further, you know, reduce and or modify access points, which also, you know, obviously creates that safety benefit that we're going for. But so I think, you know, you probably heard of access management, but again, some of those, you know, key takeaways are, you know, the investment that you get, you're preserving the mobility, you're reducing delays, you're minimizing crashes, reducing those conflicts, and just overall, you know, hopefully providing guidance to that land use development and redevelopment in the future. If we develop this plan, now it's on paper, someone comes into the county office or a city office and said, hey, we're looking at doing X with this property, they're gonna know, here's what really the long-term vision is. And they may see a condition today that may not be what that condition's gonna be in 5 years, 10 years, or a little bit future down the road as well, so. Couple other items here with just, you know, what are we looking at? Again, access management I talked about, we are looking at those opportunities, you know, we're never gonna probably get this corridor in full alignment with what MnDOT's guidelines are, but, you know, we're striving to move towards having a better access condition. We're also talking a little bit more about, you know, where are those opportunities to further, you know, develop the supporting local system. You know, the last thing you wanna see is someone that jumps on the highway and drives 200 yards down the road and then jumps off the highway. Again, that's just, it's introducing conflicts, it's affecting mobility, everything of that nature. But if you can develop that supporting road with frontage roads, backage roads, and that's ongoing, you know, that's been something that we have seen occur on the corridor at different levels, and we're just looking where are those opportunities to continue that into the future with those development opportunities. So looking at that access control, again, you know, the toolbox is always changing. You know, if we would have been in here 10 years ago talking about a J-turn or an R-cut intersection, probably people would have been like, what's that? And would not have heard it, probably not have driven it. Now that MnDOT is using it throughout the state, we're seeing it throughout the upper Midwest, even roundabouts or something, not that we're proposing, but that's, you know, just the toolbox is changing. And so we're constantly looking at what are those opportunities for intersection control to take, you know, to make things more safe and more efficient. Like I mentioned earlier, we are looking at not just cars, trucks, and all that move along the roadway, but those active transportation, which are the ped and bike type of movements. How do they move north-south and east-west? You know, we're not necessarily promoting to get them onto the highway. While they are allowed on Highway 371, it's not an interstate system. We're looking for opportunities for maybe where they can better be served as well on that local system. So again, maybe those frontage and backage roads, or making trail connections that are partly there today. And I know there's ongoing planning, and we've been, you know, talking with county staff and city staff and other organizations that are working on those multimodal trail facilities as well. And then lastly, we obviously have to always take into consideration, you know, these fiscal considerations, you know, not only the construction costs, but also the maintenance costs, because long-term, those can be pretty substantial as well when you start talking about major investments to this type of infrastructure. I talked about kind of intersections, and we are looking at a number of different intersections. You know, some obviously much more than others make sense along this corridor, but again, we didn't want to shut anything out. So we are looking at, you know, maybe there's locations where we do nothing. You talked about doing nothing earlier in your freeze. You know, there's opportunities. We don't really see a problem. We don't want to go necessarily make a fix just to make a fix. But if we do see, you know, those higher crash locations and just, you know, based on future traffic growth and projections, anticipated problems is where we're really focusing, where we would look at making some of these improvements. So signals are another option, several along the corridor. Roundabouts, you know, probably not as much on a mobility corridor, but it is something in the toolbox if the context of the roadway were to be proposed to be changed to something that's more kind of access oriented, like we want to slow people down, we want to, you know, allow better access and things, then, you know, that is an option. Right in, right outs, you know, they're out there today. We'll be looking probably at more opportunities to restrict access, to eliminate some of those more dangerous types of movements of full crossovers and things. And then grade separation, and we know of one already. The Highway 210, 371 is not part of our study, but it's in our study area. And so we're very well aware that interchange is moving forward. And it's been a lot of great discussions. I don't think we're come up with all the answers, but there's clearly another whole study process that is looking at exactly what that improvement in that segment of 371 is going to look like. So just a couple of last ones, and we'd love to get some discussion and questions going with you all. So I did mention just the ped bike and MnDOT's kind of active transportation unit came up here and did a pretty in-depth study separate from our study of the corridor of what's out there today and made a bunch of recommendations. And so we're pulling all those recommendations where we can in to see if they make sense with our improvements that we're looking at. And so, again, I think it's a lot of common stuff that you would think of, like, hey, providing, better opportunities for people to safely cross the road, providing, off-site types of facilities that can be incorporated into a bend. Maybe a frontage road could add sidewalks or, striped bike lanes. I know Baxter has some of that today. Looking for other opportunities for grade separations or better crossing opportunities. Baxter's been looking at one. There's been the underpass up in Nisswa for a number of years. Again, are there key locations where some of those items need to be implemented? And they don't even need to be of that grand scale. Maybe it's just, hey, we need to improve lighting, or we need to improve a signal system to have better system that pedestrians can cross at. And I got just one example kind of up in the BIR area. Oh, I got to move this one. So, here's a look at just, think about someone that maybe is a little bit mobility challenged, right? I mean, I could probably cross this 130 feet in a pretty easy 10-second time frame myself. But, 130 feet with 60 mile an hour, and I'm sure people are driving at least 60 miles an hour through this area, if not more. And there's no traffic control. There's no advanced warning device. And if there is someone trying to cross the road in this location that does have much, restricted type of mobility, they're going to struggle. And it's going to create a situation where it's not only unsafe for them, but for all users of the roadway. And so those are the things we're looking at when we talk about some of those active transportation improvements and those ped bike improvements. So, in this case, we have actually a good lighting in the area. So I don't want to talk about the negatives. So there's some positives. There's good lighting, and then there's also a median refuge. Now, no one wants to get stuck out in the middle there and wait, but you do really only have to cross traffic in one direction at a time. You can get to the middle, you can then look and then make your next movement across. And so these are the things we're going to look at elsewhere along the corridor if those types of improvements can be made too. So I threw a lot out there, but that's kind of what we've come with. Where we're going is we have been kind of split our study area up into kind of a north and south, and we've been meeting monthly with the communities. Counties have been involved with those two, and we're just identifying these locations, right? And we're identifying opportunities to, make some of these access changes to improve an intersection condition. And, in some areas we have one alternative, in some areas we have 4 alternatives or more. And that's kind of what we're going through now, is evaluating them, seeing what might make the most sense. We're going to roll that out to the public here. Probably, we're thinking late June. We'll see if we can do it in June or if it's going to fall into July. It's always hard to get that stuff noticed and logistically set up and all. But we're going to kind of roll that out, ask for feedback again, and then ultimately come this fall and into the early winter, come up with a set of recommendations, kind of an implementation plan on maybe what's short term, what's more longer term types of improvements, and then create that vision for the corridor and have a study report at the end that, again, all the entities will be able to build off of, incorporate into plans. Again, I know that you're talking about some long-range transportation planning in the county, and this is just a small sliver of your county, but this would be clearly an area where there would be, I'm sure, a lot of interest too with all the facilities you all have. So, love to take some questions, fill in some blanks. I ran through that awfully fast, I know, but.
As you well know, our FAD district is, the largest share of population that's not a city. And I know we've been working on that as far as looking at the comp plan of how we're doing because population growth and stuff in our area, looking at FAD district is picking up quite a bit of population growth. And looking at the last records I got from 2023, it looks like we've had quite a few housing growth in that area. The other thing I see on this one here, you know, you go to a lot of other cities and you see that you have ample room to do a frontage road. Here we have, when you get north of that, there isn't room unless you're going to impact wetlands and quite drastically. I seen what you did up there at BIR, but what do they call that? Movie theater trail or whatever it is, that one you put in there, I think really helps to take some of that pressure, especially off that corner. It's an area, I've traveled that road over 50 years going back and from work, so I've watched it over the years, and that area there, you know, because of all that ingress and egress going across is just scarier than heck. And you show the accidents that happen, how many of the near misses that we've seen happen over the years, so. That's what I see, and if we got this kind of growth, I look really forward to seeing what you come up with, some ideas to do that. I see Tim was stepping up to the mic, and if he would like to, I'd like him to leap right in there.
Yeah, just real quickly, I wanted to point out to you, and this is really important as you as the board members for the FAD, is that some of the alternatives that they are going to roll out later this June or July will include the potential for frontage roads, and the name of the road is Theater Road, actually. That was built right across from BIR, and I just want to remind you that...
Theater, that's what it was, yep.
Theater Road.
Movie theater. I was thinking of drive-in, I was thinking of other things.
I was thinking of some alternate names that were thrown out there, and I was smiling, but I just want to point out, just, you know, it's the township board, county board, that there is some cost implications for that. So Theater Road became a FAD road. So when they're building these types of things and maybe even improving some of the other intersections things, there will be some cost implications for the county, if it's a county road, and maybe for the FAD, First Assessment District budget. And so have that lens too when you're looking at these alternatives that are coming up. Is this is something that we're going to be asked as the First Assessment District to take on as a public road, and then we need to make sure that we're generating the revenue from the residents to fund that, like we did Theater Road. We increased the property tax levy accordingly to be able to take care of that new public infrastructure. So as you start to see some of these alternatives, keep in mind that there will be cost implications not only for the county but also for the First Assessment District in the short term during construction, and then in the long term in terms of maintenance.
Yeah, and we'll give you some high-level ballpark cost estimates as part of our planning level study that can give you some idea, say in short, medium, long term, you know, say like 5 and 10 year increments. So it'll give you a little bit of idea, you know, what maybe we would expect if we implemented some of those improvements. So that's what our team will do for us.
Yeah, and it's a great point Tim makes. I mean, because again, some of the improvements we're going to show, it's either going to make people take a very kind of circuitous route because we might change access, and you know, you might have to go north to come south. You know, that's what a J-turn kind of does, but we may have situations where it might have to go a little bit even further north to go south. Or is there an opportunity like, hey, if we make this frontage road connection, that's 400 feet of road that has to get built, you know, we can then get people to a standard access point, so maybe that would be worth it, right? I mean, so there's trade-offs, right? There's kind of benefits to everything we do with that, and so, but it's a great point that, you know, ultimately there's cost share policies and all of that, and, you know, it's not to be overlooked, but, you know, long-term, you know, we're just looking at how do we create a vision, and then we have to break this up, and like Tom said, we'll, you know, kind of break that into those shorter and longer term.
Yeah, it's something else to kind of consider, commissioners, is, you know, again, if from a cost sharing standpoint, you know, again, if we can prove a greater benefit to the trunk highway, you know, MnDOT can share in some of those costs too, not just put it on the shoulders of the taxpayers. Although it's still taxpayer money, but you know what I mean. The other thing is, you know, we've got some time here. We can maybe pursue some grants and some other things. We'll work with staff and identify where there's some opportunities to maybe soften the blow a little bit, not only for you but for us too, where we can partner together. And I think, you know, we've always had a good partnership up here in this region, you know, looking for those opportunities. So, and that's part of what our consulting team will help us explore, and maybe even start some of that grant application process if we can, to move some things along. One last thought, and then again turn it back to you guys. We do have a number of safety improvements that we're working on that rolled out really a lot of this out of the plan that we will be implementing over the next, I would probably call it 5 to 7 years, that are kind of independent of the study, but important to us. So you're going to see a lot of work going on even before we start working on our big pavement job up through the corridor too. And just because we're trying to, again, cut down those crashes, save that workload on state patrol and your sheriff's staff and those local police departments, because, they're responding to a lot of those. The more that we can do to help maybe implement some of those safety improvements can cut those calls down. So that's in the works too.
Yeah, no, the one we just funded, I think the county funded the study on it. That's the one for, 29 and 107?
Yeah.
Because, it's out of this study you're doing, but it is such I see that one all the time, and it get really, really scary, especially in the summer with boat traffic and people trying to cross that. That's one we really like to push that up.
Yeah. And we've got a handful of others similar to that we're pursuing some, highway safety improvement funds and some other funds to get after too. Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just would point you to page 15. I noticed that there's 3 roundabouts in Jenkins.
Good. We need that. I didn't see that on page 15. I didn't get a chance to read that. Thank you for bringing that up to me, Commissioner Coring. Is there anything else from anybody else on the board would like to bring up?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If I might, and this is kind of for the board, because we are also the township supervisors for the First Assessment District. And so this corridor that we're talking about is growing quickly. And so, having been on the Baxter City Council at one time, and we see the Delwood and Edgewood roads so close to the 371 corridor, it creates problems, serious problems. And we have an opportunity here to look at the First Assessment District and try to mitigate some of that distance so that we aren't pouring right out onto, the conflict of coming off and getting onto the 371 corridor. So I would encourage us looking at backage roads where it's really possible, frontage roads maybe, but I look more for backage roads because people come here because of the up north look. And we can still have trees and shrubs somewhat out there in the front. When you put a frontage road on there, it takes some of that away from it. But I think that as a board, we have to consider that we are a city council now for them, and how that's going to be developed from now into perpetuity is going to be extremely important. They don't want to organize, then it's up to us to look at it as a city council rather than just a township officer position, so.
Yeah, Mr. Commissioner, you hit the nail on the head. And 20 years ago when we were here talking about this, we had a lot of resentment, a lot of pushback. It was interesting this time, we didn't get as much. We had a lot of people from the First Assessment District come to a lot of the meetings, and they're interested now because they see the crashes, they've experienced the close calls, they know the traffic is going up, the number of people moving in. So I think there's going to be less of a pushback from those residents now to maybe have an interest in, some of those improvements and perhaps, special assessments or something, that Tim mentioned to perhaps pay for some of those improvements in the future. They'll be more willing to pay for some of that.
Well, my point is we need to support you folks and the county and those efforts to move those frontage or backage roads as far away from 371 as we possibly can and still have people have access.
Yeah, that's another thing that's changed over the last 20 plus years or whatever is the idea of a backage road. Everyone used to think I have to have the road in my front, right? They have to be able to see me and they have to come in that way and that way only. And we're finding, like, we had a great conversation with Nisswa a little bit ago, and we had our presentation up there, and they were really pushing the backage road idea because they're like, well, then we can have development on both sides of the road, right? We're not just being able to develop one side because we're having to pay for this infrastructure that costs a lot. Now we got the opportunity to have development on both sides of it that help, ultimately fund it and all that too. And people recognize, like, hey, I see the business, I can get there. I don't have to have, like you said, the road that's only 20 feet off of the main, highway to also access that property. So it's changing.
Anything else from anybody else on the board?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Yep, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, staff, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's doing nothing. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is draft of the transit agreement.
Jesse.
Jesse?
Good morning, Commissioners. Thanks for having me again. In your packet, you had a memo with a handful of information. I'm not going to go through all of it. I'll just highlight some of the important information for you. Just a quick reminder, in 2023, mid-September, we recommended and implemented a handful of changes to the county service. We now do a twice daily morning and afternoon pickup and drop-off service in Crosby and Pequot Lakes coming to and from Brainerd. A lot of that change was a result of avoiding some of the deficits that we had seen in 2022 and some of the deficits that we were projecting in 2023. We made some assumptions in that analysis and some of those recommendations. Now that we have a handful of months of implementing that service, we were able to kind of look back and watch those 6 months and seeing how those changes kind of affected the ridership and how closely were we on what those assumptions were. Some of the things that we did find was the fare increases did have a little bit more of an impact than we originally had thought. Primarily the St. Francis students that we originally were hoping for continued ridership that affected them quite greatly. A lot of them made alternative means like carpooling. A lot of those families started carpooling. We do still have a few St. Francis students that ride from like the Crosby area, but very few students still ride from the Crosby and Pequot areas. A lot of the productive alternative riders no longer use the service. A few do. We were hoping to maintain a lot more than we were originally expecting. When we projected out about what we were thinking for ridership, we were thinking somewhere along the lines of about a 50% loss of ridership. What we've seen is about an 80% loss of ridership. So quite a bit more than we were originally expecting. However, when we looked back at 2023, we were very happy to see that ultimately we did not run a deficit for not only the overall program, but the county service specifically. We were able to break even rather than running an overall deficit. So we were happy to see that the changes that we did implement did achieve the overall goal that we had when we made those recommendations. So with that, moving on, we are coming up with the term of our agreement with Blue Sky. So we issued our request for proposals, and we did receive one proposal from Blue Sky for the next 3-year contract. That contract was reviewed by staff as well as recommended by the Brainerd TAC. It was reviewed by the Brainerd City Council last night at their meeting. They agreed to award the contract to Blue Sky Transit. Included in the packet is a breakdown of kind of the annual costs. I will highlight that those numbers are lower than the previous 3 years, but that should be expected with the reduction of the Pine River service as well as the reduction in the Crow Wing County service. We were kind of expecting a reduction in costs in the contract. So something that we were kind of expecting, but so the overall contract is going down. Staff is very confident that we can afford the contract within the existing framework that we have currently. So we did recommend that we continue to work with Blue Sky. There's some things that we want to continue to work with them operationally. We do have some concerns with them on that side of it, but that's more of a staffing piece that we want to continue to do. But that'll be on our end and something that we'll continue to work with. On the agreement side, this is something that we have kind of developed after the loss of Pine River. We had to accommodate their share of the expenses. If you remember, we had everybody's share of the expenses kind of split by percentage. As they are no longer part of the cooperative between the different agencies, we had to split their percentage among the rest of the three. And how we did that is we kind of projected an approximation of the fuel costs for how we were splitting the service. And based on that, we were expecting Crow Wing County to share in about 17% of the expenses. This would be down from about 35% from the old agreements. So that was one big change from the old agreements to the new agreements, was going from the old percentage to the 17% in this new agreement. The other piece in the new agreement is we did put a date in here for the term of agreement, and it does coincide with our third-party contract. In 3 years, we do have kind of an end date in there, and it is put in there intentionally because what we want to do is, as staff, we want to review when the new contract comes. We want to review it and make sure that this service continues to meet the needs of our different agencies. And if something changes, or if it's no longer meeting your needs, or if something needs to change, that we revisit this agreement. And if we have to make changes, that's probably the best and opportune time to do so. So we felt like that was a very important thing to make sure that that was reflected in a new agreement, is to put that date in here too. With that, there are some changes that we're expecting to come with transit, and some things for the county board to continue to consider for its own service. Something that from our transit staff, when Andy Stone retired, we did not backfill the transit specialist when Crystal took over the transit coordinator position. We were very concerned. Obviously, we were aware of the deficit that we were incurring. We were very concerned about backfilling her position and the ability to afford that position. We are much more confident after now analyzing this new contract and the amount of workload that she has, that we would like to look at trying to backfill that specialist. We have a lot of need to work on operations with that contractor and make sure that we're continuing to improve the service with them. We want to be able to do that without impacting not only service but as well as fares. As long as we can do that, I think we can trying to accomplish that goal from a staffing perspective. The other piece is we're just getting into the MnDOT operating grant cycle as well as the vehicle grant cycle. One thing that they're proposing is another 95.5% operating grant share, similar that they've done last year. I know I reported in last year that they haven't typically been, in the last couple of years, actually hitting that number. One big change that they're going to do this upcoming year is a 5% year-over-year increase as compared to 2% like they had in the past. So that's going to be a big increase for us, as well as a potential grant to help kind of catch up some of these underfunded services. They'll allow some of our services to essentially apply for getting some of the funds to meet some of our unmet needs. So that might be an opportunity for us to catch up. Should that happen, we might have some more opportunities to look at improving some of our services like the county, Baxter, Brainerd, and maybe there's some other opportunities to do some improvements. We need to get some more information on what that looks like in the next couple of months between staffing, grants, and what that is all going to look like, especially from a long-term basis. We have 6 months worth of ridership, but that's, in my mind, I don't think that's quite enough to really draw a lot of good information from. I think I'd like to have a few more months of information, especially see how the summer goes now that the students are no longer riding without school. I'd like to get some more information, and then I think we can make some a little bit more better judgments and better projections and bring some better recommendations to the county board moving forward. With that, I can answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So Jesse, so now do you have a new contract with us? I know that you changed our contract, and I believe we had some objections. Did you get those corrected? If
Yes.
you remember you changed it from, I don't know, it was 90 days out to 100.
Yes, sir. Yep.
That's all changed, so we're all good to go on that? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And I will say, on this transit thing, I think, well, I'm going to speak for all of us on the county board. We want to be able to provide service reasonably. I know Commissioner Hoag has said to me, geez, I hope the bus can keep going to Crosby. But the thing is it gets to a point where you're going to have to go back to the property taxes. And I don't know, the rest of you hear from people that property taxes are going up because they are. This is a matter of money and a matter of how much we can afford to do this. And then we say, well, the money's coming from the state, 85%. That's all tax money too. The whole thing is being subsidized. And I know that I've received, not a lot, but, if you remember, I had one of my constituents, but I had somebody from Pequot call me, and they were actually demanding service that is actually more than what they provide in Minneapolis. They want a door-to-door service. They don't even provide that in Minneapolis. If you want to get on the bus, you got to walk 10 blocks or 12 blocks to wherever the train or the bus is at. And when anybody ever calls me on this, I just tell them, that means the property taxes are going to go up. And about 1% is about 460,000 is 1% for the county budget on that levy. And so I think the board needs to be concerned about that. I think we're trying to do everything we can to still provide some type of service in a very rural area. This is a big county, and I guess I'd like to know what kind of service is being provided in Cass County or Aiken County. It's hard to do it in the rural areas. So I don't know, that was kind of a speech, I guess, but I'm concerned about it, but somebody's got to pay for all this stuff. And it's the same thing with the city council. I watched the meeting last night, and I think the city council is concerned about, mindful about taxes too. So anyway, that's all on that.
Last year, Jesse, when we changed that bus route in Pequot, because it was necessary to change it. I mean, it wasn't making any money, it was losing money. I received quite a few phone calls from up in that area, and I said, well, this is all we can do at this time. So I'll be speaking to them tonight because they're asking, what else can we do? And I'm looking at it, they have to figure out something in the rural area of kind of a different system. We can't be everything to everybody. And I think the service works really good in the Brainerd-Baxter area, but getting out there further, I think it'd be a real stretch to see if you could, get out there and do it economically, and I don't think it's possible on the system that we have set up. In the contract, you have in this contract, it says, and I don't know what this number pertains to, but you have it where it says, where was it? Where's the 17% at? I seen it right. Under 8. Local share of transit costs, the local share of transportation costs shall be based upon the percentage of overall anticipated fuel and service area. The Crow Wing County's local share shall be 17% of expenses during the term of this agreement. That's no matter what your expenses are, we pick up 17% of it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Is there any other questions from the board at all? Okay. Thank you.
Sir.
This will be on the agenda?
Deb, will this be on the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, yes, this will be on the agenda for the next board meeting.
Okay. You didn't say Mr. Chair first.
Mr. Chair.
And then you could speak to Debbie. You got to know the proper etiquette. Paul's been teaching me.
Well, I think we're a little looser when it's a committee in the whole, not as formal.
Paul, I'm not trainable. I think next on our agenda is the comp plan update.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. We're here for the sixth update we provided to you on where we're at with the comprehensive plan update. We do have Robin Kaufman online with Bolton and Mink. She'll be doing most of the presenting today. But today, as kind of as our standard method, we're going to update you on our progress and schedule overview of where we're at. We're going to discuss services, infrastructure, goals, and policies, talk about the implementation chapter, looking for some discussion and feedback if there's any questions or thoughts, and then kind of that 3-month look ahead as far as where we're at right now and where we hope to be in a few months. So at this point, unless you have any questions for me, I'd like to turn it over to Robin, and she can kind of walk through the PowerPoint that we've got prepared for you.
Great. No questions. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, Robin.
Morning.
Mr. Chair, if I might, I do have one quick question.
Okay.
It's not very significant, but it says the final draft chapter is sent to the city. I'm wondering what city that was sent to. I think it's just a typo, should be county.
Should be the county, yes.
All right.
Excellent.
We
So
got
we'll
that figured
do-
out, so now we can go forward.
Yes. Thought I'd just go over quickly go over the schedule. You can see here, the red line continues to march down the calendar, and you can see lots of dones on to the left of it. So we've got draft chapters completed, and we're going through kind of an internal review process right now. And we're going to start doing some public engagement and schedule. I noticed that the dates down here were an older version on the very bottom row as far as adopting. So, but we're going to talk about schedule a little bit later. So just wanted to note that those dates are wrong, and we'll talk on the last slide about what we're proposing for approval timeline. So the next items, the last two chapters that we have to present to you are, first of all, the services and infrastructure goals and draft policies. So we've seen the goals before, but we've got some draft policies here on the right side of each of the slides. And I don't know if you want, maybe I'll just give you a minute or two to read them, and I can take any questions. But you can see generally on the first goal is creating the countywide inventory, infrastructure, and utility plans. And you can see the policies there, the three policies on the right-hand side. And then goal number 2 is managing centralized and individual wastewater systems throughout the county to minimize environmental impacts and protect ground and surface water quality. And you can see the first policy there is really related to land uses and driving development to areas with existing infrastructure, and then seeking opportunities for centralizing septic systems if there's concentrated land uses. Any questions on these two?
Very good.
Okay.
Okay. And then the next slide, we just have 3 goals, and you can see the first one here is maintaining this the comprehensive waste management system. I know when we did our tour late last year, that was the waste management system was a big component of that. Talked a little bit about it. So, the importance of making sure that it's self-sustaining and supporting robust recycling programs. And you can see the one policy goal there.
So it's important, I think, if you look at that first policy, is that we want to ensure that any of the, solid waste that's generated in the county comes to the landfill. We don't want to see any leaving the county, and so that's what, policy number 1 is meant to do. That's for the mixed solid waste. That's just the garbage trucks that come by, week to week. And then we also want, the goal of 25% of the demo debris, in the county to come to us. We're not the only, demolition landfill in the county, so we don't think we need it all, but, we think that, 25% of that would help us to maintain operations with our current demo landfill operations as we currently have them.
Okay.
And then goal number 4, didn't necessarily have any specific policies for that, but you can see that was where we had talked about this one before about embracing innovative technologies that offer alternative options to including appropriate locations for renewable energy sources. And then we retitled this one the resiliency goals. So a lot of these, if you recall at the beginning, the original plan was to have an actual chapter on sustainability. We've actually just changed this to be resiliency. And so instead of an actual goal or chapter on sustainability, we've just titled this as a resiliency goal related to this chapter. And so you can see just creating and maintaining a resilient infrastructure and utility system, including safe drinking water and access. Oh, I've got a little blurb or bubble there. Access to, sorry, I can't read it because there's like a.
High-speed internet. Yep, access to high-speed internet, broadband. Yep.
Yes, thank you.
So I've got a question or more of a comment to Chris. So I don't know, I feel like I continue to evolve over the last 12 years. I know I'm still a property rights advocate for people and their property. But I'm finding lately, within the last couple of years, there are so many places countywide, but it seems like I don't know, to me it seems like it's in my district, where these people are destroying this property by used oil, junk, garbage, rats, on and on and on. Well, when we talk about property rights, yeah, okay, so property rights here, but what about the person that's next to you? They got property rights too, and you're destroying their property rights. And I'm just wondering, Chris, is there any way, would this be the proper place to incorporate a goal of, I don't know exactly how it would look, but to I want to even be more aggressive on these cleanups of these properties. I've heard from the mayor of Garrison, and I know we're going to clean up that property just south of Garrison. It is an absolute disaster. He says, but when people are coming up on 169 to the city of Garrison, the first thing they see is this garbage and just an absolute disaster. And I just think we got to let people know that when you have property right, well, it's my property. Well, you know what? You're not going to live forever. And then you destroy this property with garbage, and it reminds me of the one that we had, I don't know how many big dumpsters. It was endless of all this stuff. We can't let this happen because it's going to ruin our county. Pretty soon we're not going to be known as Minnesota's favorite place. We're going to be Minnesota's junkiest place. And I don't think that's a good thing. So I guess I'm just asking a question. Is there something that we'd incorporate into our plan as a goal? Or what do you think, Chris? You know where I'm coming. We've had lots of conversations about this.
I do, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Corning. I think that's a great point. And there has been, I think, a proliferation of just some of these nuisance situations across the county. Some have risen the level of being a public health nuisance. Some have risen to the level of being, like a junkyard type situation that we're not trying to encourage. We have certain locations in the county where we want to see that type of thing, well managed and screened and that, but not just not being unregulated and having an impact to the neighborhood. I think your point is well taken. On people do have a proper right to their property. But when they're impacting others, and not just the neighbors around them, but let's say we have some sort of contamination, spilling used oils or any of those types of fluids, that will have a direct impact on the groundwater and for those around to be able to have clean drinking water, which I think is one of our key things we want to really protect around here, because most people in the county do get their water from the ground, and so we want to protect that groundwater. I really do think that we could have a goal in this section that says that the county wants to be proactive on cleaning up some of these, we could refer to, junk situations, nuisance situations, public health situations, and actively, begin to work with landowners. We don't want to come with the heavy hand of government. I think we want to give people the opportunity to gain compliance if they're willing to work with us. And so that's always option number one. But if that's something that they're not willing to work with, we have other tools in the toolbox that we can use to do that too. So I think we can craft something that would say that and have it here, I think, as a goal, because I think that would be really important, especially as we start to update our solid waste ordinance and looking at, what types of things in that do we want to regulate as far as these nuisance situations. And I think this would just be kind of that catalyst to help continue with that process. So I would strongly encourage that.
I would hope the rest of the board would like to put a goal in here, and then to even take it to the next step. I think down the road we need to talk about our ordinance, our solid waste ordinance, about how we put more teeth into it to cleaning it up, because I keep getting calls, I don't know about the rest of you, but I just went down to a nice lady, and she's living, it's down where all those lots are, just south of Garrison. What is that called, Chris? Do you remember that?
The Port Mille Lacs area?
Yeah.
Port Mille Lacs Ranchos?
Yeah,
Yep.
and I went to one place, there's a burned-out truck right on the township road, and then the lot is, it just looked like a tornado went through there, and I'm gonna have you, I haven't told you about that yet, but I'm gonna have you go down there and look that over and see if there's anything.
I know about that one, when we've been working with the township on that one to
And I
help with
looked
that.
up who the owner was, and it's a dad and a son, and the son has an active warrant with Crow Wing County. I can't tell you about Eddie, but he's got an active warrant with Crow Wing County, so that's what we're dealing with.
Chris, to that point though, of unsightly, and I won't name the city that I've served for 15 years in his elected position, but we had that same issue up there when I was living in that area. And what it was is the local jurisdiction took and started slowly over a period of time tightening up and cleaning up those unsightly properties. And it took us a while to do that. But if it's in local jurisdictions, it is the local jurisdiction's authority to be able to do that. It really isn't the county's jurisdiction to come in there to that local jurisdiction and do that, is it? Except if it's an unorganized territory or some of the other county property.
So what we're talking about here is we adopt this comprehensive plan. This would adopt to all the townships in the county.
Yep.
And then how it can connect with the cities at the same time. But, so that's more of that bigger picture, planning process. But when you get into down in the weeds of actually implementing and putting things on the ground, we wouldn't be going into a city like, say, Jenkins or Pequot and enforcing a junk cleanup in those situations. But a public health nuisance, that is overarching.
That
covers
overrides
the whole
it.
county, including the cities.
That overrides it, yep.
And so that's a matter of having the cities can choose to regulate. I had a call probably 3 weeks ago about some situations in Baxter, and I got a hold of their planning and zoning over there with Josh Doty, and he ran right with it and took care of it, and I think it's already been resolved. So the cities can have whatever, level of authorities that they want to do also to regulate. This is just relating to just, the townships that we.
I agree
the county.
I agree with Commissioner Coring. We should have a standard in there of what we have an expectation as of a county, and the other jurisdictions can at least tie to that, so.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about services and infrastructure, things that we've, obviously this is a point I think was well taken about the junk salvage and the nuisance situation. Are there any other things that we would like to address, or do you think we've kind of maybe covered it with what's?
Chris, just refresh me on the construction debris disposal. Is there not talk with PCA as far as those being lined?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hoag, that's a great point. Right now, the current rules set up with the PCA for demo landfills is that they're an unlined system, and that you're basically taking construction debris. So you're taking, from demoing a house, block, the shingles, the, wood, those sorts of, they're allowed to be put into that demolition landfill. And there's current rules being put together by the PCA that looks like they're going to require that to be a lined landfill, similar to what our current landfill is for all of our MSW. And so that will have an impact on what route we want to go. Do we want to have a separate demolition landfill and have that lined and then have to treat that leachate, versus do we want to say, well, maybe all of our demolition landfill will then just go already into our lined landfill, because we've already got a landfill, so do we need to have two separate ones? But the issue you're running into is there's a different taxing difference between MSW waste and between the demo landfill. And so that needs to get figured out for that to be a viable option, because there's a higher tax rate for MSW than there is for our construction debris to put into that. And so if the taxes are the same, folks probably won't come to our landfill to drop off this, the commercial debris. They would take that to a different landfill. They have that lower tax rate. So that's a decision that we have to make. We've got time to figure that out. It's not coming up tomorrow, but it's over the next few years. We're going to have to kind of.
It could impact.
It could impact us, absolutely.
25% number as well.
Yeah, Right, yeah, so that's, it's looking, one of the nice things that we all know about our landfill, and it says here in goal 3 that it's self-sustaining and supports itself, so we do have to get the income generated from people bringing in items to dispose of, so that we can maintain that without having to ever get to the point of, using levy to help pay for the landfill. It's a self-supporting enterprise fund, and that's the goal future of having that go down the road. Any other thoughts about infrastructure? Okay, I think we'll jump into our implementation chapter. I'll let Robin run with this one again, and be happy to, if there's any questions, feel free to jump in and interrupt us at any time.
Thank you, and good discussion. I'll work with Chris on adding goal and policy related to that. As far as implementation chapter, no specific goals or policies on this one, but it is going to just generally outline the different official controls and regulations that the county has available at its disposal, as well as funding mechanisms, fairly high level. But then what we're working on is doing an implementation table that's going to identify all of the goals and policies, and then it'll, for each of those, it'll identify who's the lead department within the county. Are there any supporting partners? It'll identify just high-level types of resources, and then a priority level. So this is what it will generally look like. I just picked one of the goals and one or two of the policies, just to kind of give you an example. Showing here, that we would identify which department would generally be responsible for following through with that. Are there other partners within the county or the state that might help support that? Any resources that could be used to support that implementation of that policy? And then just a general indication. We didn't want to put, this was going to be done in 2025, 2026. It's a little bit too precise, but at least identifying if it was going to be a short-term, mid-term, or long-term priority. So that you'll have. We didn't want to, in the interest of time, go through the entire table, but this would just give you an example of what it'll look like. If there's any comments or questions about that, or if there's something that you think we're missing.
And I think what's key to this implementation table is really the priority of it, because I've seen other comp plans where they had years and how much money was going to. It was really specific, and it just really wasn't feasible to get to that specificity at this point in it. But there are just things that we know that we want to do on the short-term basis that are important, but also know that we're playing long-term for on some of these goals and policies as well. So that's the kind of balance that I'm trying to get with that, is just to not say we're going to do something by 2025, because we just don't know what the funding will be available and what other opportunities there, but some things we know we just need to work on quicker than maybe some of the other ones. So that was kind of the reasoning behind that priority setup like that.
And related to that, we didn't specify specific grants, just because it seems like the grant programs are, constantly changing, and we wouldn't be able to forecast, what grant programs, for example, might come out in 2 years. Right. So we didn't want to necessarily limit it.
So any questions about that, or that maybe more of the method, maybe than more of the, maybe what's here, but does the method seem to work as how we got this laid out as we'll do this now for all of the future, the chapters that we have, all the different goals and policies? This will kind of be the way of kind of laying it out. Does that make sense? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I like the way it's laying out and the way it's playing out here. I appreciate it.
Okay. So one of the things that we're working on still is we've got all the chapters put together. We're still finishing up the details on transportation. We're working on that now with Tim and the team out at Highway to get some more specificity in there that they'd like to see, especially related to the first assessment district. So getting that put together. And so, to be honest, we're really kind of getting to the point of where we're getting close to having a draft plan, completed. And I think it's been nice with the engagement that with the board has been as we moved through these past, we've had 6 meetings now. And so hopefully as we get to the plan to you and you get a look at it, there shouldn't be anything that should jump out as being a kind of a big surprise or I hadn't heard of anything yet. And so, and there might be, and if so, let us know. But we're kind of hoping as we kind of just took it in bite-sized pieces that it really should make for, as we go through this process now of public review and all that, I think, a little bit more smooth. Our goal, looking forward now is that we need to still tidy up the plan and kind of get a few of the drafts put together, but, our goal would be to get that to you and the planning commission members within probably within a week, just the plan itself, so you can take a look at it, review it. If you want to, get a hold of me and we could do some one-on-one discussions. If you want to go through some things in detail, just let me know. I'd be happy to do that. Because depending on how it all goes, what I'm really hoping is that we could start the public comment period in June. It's like the first week of June, go from June 3rd, and we'd go all the way to the end of first week of July on the 5th. And that would be our 30-day comment period. And then I'd like to come back to you next month at the Committee of the Whole on the 18th and just kind of discuss what comments have we seen so far, kind of get your you can kind of see what people have been giving us feedback on and kind of get your take. Is that something that, you hear the feedback, that's a great change, or no, I think we're going to stick with what we have. I want to keep you engaged in that as much as we can, because then the goal would be, if all this time frame kind of lines up properly, I'd like to go to the Planning Commission on July 18th, because they were the ones that are going to hold a public hearing for this, like we do for an ordinance amendment or those things. We would have a workshop with them at 3 p.m. from like 3 to 4:30 to go over the plan a little bit and answer any questions they have, open to the public. Anybody can come participate. And then at 5 o'clock, we would have hold that public, I can't guarantee 5 o'clock, but that evening at that meeting in July, we'd hold the public hearing. And then based on the feedback that we get from the Planning Commission, our goal would be to come back and see you and visit at the August Committee of the Whole, kind of which is a summary of everything. Here's kind of it all put together. Here's our thoughts. Here's the plan. And if it's something that you guys support and are in favor of, we could come back to the county board meeting the next week on the 27th and hopefully get an approved plan. So I could see the plan approved if we can kind of follow this timeline, by the end of August.
So one question about, I know that we had one meeting and we invited all the townships there.
Yep.
And if I recall correctly, I think John was the only one that was there that really was representing townships.
Correct.
That was it. And so, I know I can't twist their arm, but is there any way that in this comment period that we reach out to them and say, here's the plan?
Yep.
Because I don't want to hear from somebody after the plan is complete and they go, oh my Lord, what happened?
Yep. No, absolutely.
Well, we didn't hear anything from
So if you go back to, approximately about a year ago when we started doing that, kind of that public engagement from last spring up until, say, July, August-ish, we're kind of going to do the same thing. So we're going to put out for public comment. We want to reach out to the townships. We're going to be working on social media to try to get some, people to get information there. There'll be ways to comment on the website. We're going to be on the radio. We're definitely going to send information out to both the townships and the cities asking for, final review and that. So we're going to be actively engaging, trying to get as much feedback from the public as well as our local government units at the same time to give us their feedback and see if how the plan is looking, from their perspective, and see if we need to, make any changes or if you're still content with where the plan is at. So I think we're going to have lots of opportunity for public engagement. That's something that Robin with the team at Bolton & Mink are going to help us with that and kind of put that outreach plan together. And we'll work hard for 30 days to try to get as much feedback in from folks as we can.
And then just one more thing. Well, it's never one more thing.
I'm never with you, Paul.
Maybe just explain that this comprehensive plan, that's just what it is. It's a plan.
Right.
It's not, if somebody says, if they're going by our ordinances and they say, well, this is in your comprehensive plan. It's just a plan. It's an outline of a plan
Right.
It isn't our ordinance.
Correct. This is, what you see from a comprehensive plan is not going to be the document that will tell somebody how far to build from a lake or,
Right.
how close, what type of septic system they need to build or, those sorts of things. But it will give us the context and the framework to be able to have those ordinances in place that will say, here's how we want to see the county grow between now and the year 2040. There are certain applications like a variance or a conditional use permit that, the question is, does this align with the comprehensive plan? And if somebody is proposing something that just isn't maybe against the comprehensive plan or it doesn't follow what the comprehensive plan spells out, that could be, a factor will be considered in whether to approve or deny, a request like that. So that's one of the things we always look at is this in harmony with the county's comprehensive plan? And with this new setup I think we have here now, I think it's going to give really some clear direction for those types of requests of what people are asking for. And it's like anything, depending if you're supporting an application or if you're against it, you can use this to probably, look both ways on it. So it's just really looking towards the overall goal and the harmony of the plan and applying that to the different situations we have. I think this will give us some flexibility to apply for some grants to fund certain projects because we called out in our comprehensive plan. But it doesn't mean that everything in our comprehensive plan is going to get done either between now and 2040. And it doesn't mean that in 2 years something might come up and go, okay, we need to amend the comp plan because something changed. And so then it's not like it's a document, you get it approved and you stick it on the shelf and you come back and check it in, 15, 16 years. It's an active moving document and we'll be, referring to it, quite a bit in the planning and zoning side. I know from the transportation side as well, it'll be a document that's used quite a bit.
And then I would just say that this is my 12th year, so from where I was 12 years ago, I think I'm in a different place on a lot of different issues. And I would point out one where if 12 years ago, if you'd have said, well, I want down in St. Matthias, I want 2.5 acre lots or 5 acre lots, I'd have said, oh, hell no. But now I've come to change my opinion as I think about this good friend of mine, Warren Morgan, who we just approved. Okay, so Warren's got this land, he wants to split off 5 acres for his granddaughter. Why would we be opposed to that? Why would we say, no, Warren, you gotta give her, it's gotta be 20 acres or nothing?
Right.
So I think we've gotta, and the more people that move here, the more people that wanna build a house, I think it just makes sense to have where the big farmland is, to keep that in ag and keep that where it's big parcels and where it makes sense to have the small parcels. I think I've came a long ways as far as changing my mind there.
Yeah, and I think the ultimate goal that we want to have is flexibility. We don't want to be so rigid that, one size fits all because it doesn't. And this is something I've been, telling staff repeatedly. Once you've seen one property, you've seen one property. And so every property has its own characteristics, its own, things that are going on there. And so just because it's something happened here doesn't mean it's going to be the same thing right next door. So that's part of the process we go through is to do evaluate everybody individually for what's there on the property. And like you said, this one for the Morgans worked out. It made sense to have that smaller lot for the granddaughter. So we're in the process of getting that figured out now and getting ready to record deeds for them. So, things are moving along in that situation well. And I think overall this is going to give us the roadmap that we need going forward to help us decide, which direction this county will go for between now and 2040.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Chris, will they see a draft plan at the June Committee of the Whole?
I'd like to get them before that.
Before that.
I'm hoping it'll be next week.
Okay, so you'll get the draft plan prior to it going out for comment period, so that
Absolutely.
everybody is on the same page.
Yes.
When public
And
comment
if all of a
starts
sudden you
occurring.
read the plan, you call me and say, we need to hold off, let's wait, then we can do that. And just because the time schedule now is set up doesn't mean that we can't bump it back a month if we need to, or whatever time frame that you guys need to be comfortable with what this is being put together, so.
One other thing, Chris, is, we do a good job, I think, at the county of sending stuff out, notices out and stuff, and I know Bolton Mink does a nice job of trying to get other people into Paul's thing. We don't really want to have townships and cities coming, well, why didn't you tell me about it? Why didn't you tell me about it? Maybe it's up to us to reach out to our townships and our districts and stuff like that and just say, hey, you know what, we got that public hearing coming up, or we got that public open house. This would be the time for you to come in. Maybe it comes upon us to also reach out to those local jurisdictions in our districts and do that. So I'm just wanted to share that.
Okay.
That's all I had. Anybody else have anything else?
For Chris? Not for Chris.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Anything from Robin? Do you have anything else to share? Okay.
I don't think so.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Madam Chair, or Mr. Chair, I do
everyone.
have one item I'd like to just touch
Sure.
on briefly.
You may.
I received an email this morning from the Brainerd City Administrator that at their council meeting last night, the council did direct staff that they would like to conduct a working group to discuss airport issues. And they're looking for 2 county commissioners who would serve on that working group along with staff and 2 city council members. So I'd be looking for 2 volunteers from you if you would be interested in serving on that airport working group. I was thinking perhaps Commissioner Coring, since it's in District 1, and Commissioner Barrows, as he's currently on the Airport Commission, but I'd be open to whatever other options are there.
Are you okay with that, Paul, serving on that? Would you do a good job for the
I
county?
will do the best job I can, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So, yeah, if you're,
So,
if you're
if you're okay with it? Yeah. I think it's, yeah, I don't know enough about it to be interested in it, and I think these people are well-served.
I will communicate that to Mr. Broyles, and we'll get started on that group.
Okay.
One other thing, Mr. Chair, before, did you have anything else?
That's all I had.
Okay, one other thing from me, you know, obviously we know, is this on? Okay. Well, I want to make sure everybody's listening. You know, obviously we know that the flag has now changed, which I think was the dumbest thing that this state has ever done, but it's done. So, if you remember, I donated this beautiful American flag, and I donated the beautiful Minnesota flag, which is not there anymore because I took it home with me because I'm guessing we probably shouldn't have it in here, so I took it out. But another thing, the seal has changed also. So I'm assuming that we should probably change that. And so a suggestion that I have, it's just a suggestion, is what about if we decided that we wanted to maybe craft our own seal? So if some idiot changes it again, then we have our own seal and we can say, we have our own seal, so screw you. And so I'm just wondering if we could just, because I've been to like the city of Little Falls, they have their own seal. So different places have their own seal. I mean, is that something, what do you guys think? You think yes, no?
I think it's I really like the idea, and if it, whatever statute is, if we don't have to have a seal, the only question I have is, do we determine what the seal is and then tell everybody else in Crow Wing County what the seal's gonna be, just like the state did with the flag? Do we determine it here, or does the citizens of Crow Wing County determine the seal?
Well, I don't know.
Mr. Chair, I would state that there's not an opportunity for the citizens to weigh in on what the seal would be in regards to the county. There's no real statutory authority to create or not create, if you will, a seal. And I think it's more at your discretion whether you choose to do so or not. And if you do, you could adopt a seal. A future board could always choose to change the seal if they wanted to do so. It would be more for ceremonial display, such as what's available here in the boardroom. It could be utilized in different county correspondence as such, but it wouldn't necessarily be permanent forever and ever. It would be what is decided at this point in time.
Kind of the same thing as our logo. Our logo has changed since I've been here. It used to be trees. Yep,
Correct.
Yep. And now it's changed, and it could change again with another board, but I'm just suggesting that. I don't know. I guess I'd be okay with leaving that there. I just don't see the problem with it, but I'm just wondering if we need to do
we have to remove it, Deb?
It is no longer the seal of the state of Minnesota, so if you're going to display a seal there, it either should be the current seal for the state of Minnesota, or you may choose to decide to create a new county seal and display that. There is no requirement that you have to have the state of Minnesota seal displayed in your boardroom. We do have an inventory of we're working on an inventory of where we currently have the state seals, and there are some locations where we will have to have that. For instance, in a courtroom, that's a state function, they're going to need to have the state seal behind the bench in those situation, so we would be replacing those. If you choose to put a seal in this, behind the board, you may want to have it be a county seal. There's nothing that says that you have to have a state seal displayed.
Is it something we have to make right now as a decision, or could we
Yes,
get
right
some?
now. Don't need more information.
Yes, I do need more information, Paul.
If you would like, we could work up a couple of different designs. We could work with a design to come up with a couple of different designs for your consideration. We could also, once we take that one down, we can see how it's mounted there to begin with. Maybe you don't need to have any seal there if you choose not to have a seal.
Yeah.
So we'll look at what's behind there when we
Yeah.
take it down. If we do determine that there is something that needs to go up, then we'll bring it back to you. You can decide if it's the new state seal or if you'd like us to go down the path of looking at a county seal,
Okay,
if
thank you.
that's agreeable to everybody.
I don't know if it's agreeable to everybody, but yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay?